All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. We're going to be talking to another artist today. My name is Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started.
All right, well, we're getting ready to start another one here, and I'm going to toss it off to Aaron. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your book?
Hey, everybody. My name's Aaron Dowen. I am the co-owner of Catalyst Comic Studio, and I write a bunch of stuff, but the one we're talking about today is Tilt, which is 1 through 4 issues are coming up on Kickstarter to close out the whole first story arc. So it's a big deal for us. We're looking forward to it. It's an interesting style of superhero book, so hopefully new people will gravitate toward it as well.
Awesome. Excellent. Hey, can you do us a favor? Oh, sorry, Ben. Just so everybody knows, give us like an elevator pitch for the book itself, just so everybody knows what they'd be getting themselves into.
Yeah, so Tilt is a superhero story. It's set in the Catalyst Comics universe. It centers around a character named Patrick Eitilt. He is Irish and American, so his last name literally means flight. So when we meet him as a teenager. He's about 15 and starts exhibiting superpowers, and his parents hand him off to a mysterious guy named Exquisite, who ends up sending him to pretty much who the main bad guys of the entire universe are, which is the Council of Elders. So they experiment on him, turn him into a mercenary. He gets out, but he was taken when he was 15, so he has no home. He's homeless when we meet him. He's still in a 15-year-old's mindset. And it's a gritty, fourth wall breaking. It has a lot of heart and a lot of humor to it as well. And we play off a lot of different superhero tropes just because I'm a nerd.
No, that was one of the fun things reading Tilt was like some of those tropes that you played with, and then I did love the fourth wall breaking. I was laughing like when he's like, "Sorry guys, I'm moving to captions instead of." I don't want people to hear me talking to you.
And the lady's still like, "Who's he talking to?"
yeah. No, it's really fun, man. And so, but I'm wondering, how did you get into comics in the first place? Because you had the whole Catalyst universe and everything. Was something that had been in your head for a while? How did you get started into comics?
Yeah, so I've been writing since I was a kid. I started writing a lot of short stories in middle school. I wrote some poetry that, thank God can't be found anymore. And if you do find anything with my name attached to it, I will deny it until I die. But I wrote a lot of short stories, and then the first character that came to my mind was actually Paradigm, and it was more of I just wanted to sit down and see what it would be if I were to write a superhero story. So it wasn't even a comic book script. It was more of just a storyline. And out of that birthed the Council of Elders and the world at large, what's being played on. And I had this whole list of just extra notes that I thought would have been cool for Ben, but they didn't really fit in with him. And that list is what became Tilt, which ended up becoming our more popular character. But it was kind of planned that way, to be honest. I wanted to have a character like Paradigm who's more grounded and dark and takes you on more of a, I guess, emotional journey. And then I wanted one that everybody could kind of dive into and just have fun with, and that was Tilt, and luckily that's exactly what happened. But I was closet writing up until about 2015, 2016, and I found out that one of my buddies was also closet writing superhero stuff, and we're like, what happens if we try to do something with this? So we started working together. We established Catalyst, and then he fell off the face of the map, and I was kind of left holding the bag of what do I do with Catalyst. We had a joint story that was being illustrated. The illustrator was a local artist named Matt Sotelo. He's done a few of our books now, but I talked to him about it, and he was like, well, let's just do your first one, which was Paradigm. And so that's what we did. We went into it with one goal, that was to finish and publish a comic book and get it done so we can say we've done it. When we did that, we had a lot of support, and we had people that wanted to help kind of start the company. So Tilt was born right after that, and we were able to, we didn't even crowdfund Tilt number 1. We ended up crowdfunding with number 2. But that was in about so the Paradigm number 1 released in 2018, and then Tilt kind of that summer. So we're still relatively young, but we're still having a lot of fun doing it, and we don't plan to stop anytime soon. But it was really just a matter of learning different styles of writing. I went to college, and I have a master's of education, and I taught creative writing, and I taught English literature, and it's what I enjoy doing. And this is just another way for me to tell stories.
So you can break that old saying, then those who can't do teach. You can break the mold there.
I teach and I still do.
See,
that's awesome, Aaron. So so with this book with Tilt and that, so it sounds like you said originally like you had a friend or a couple of friends that were that you were aware of, like for talent, like. Again, thinking of Tilt and kind of what you have in your mind as far as where you want to start or what story you want to kind of progress through. Did you kind of like bounce that off of other people? Did you go to like comic book stores to try to find artists? Did you go online? Like what was your kind of your collective process just to say, this is what I want to do. Now, how do I get from wanting to do it to actually doing it?
Yeah, so one of the first people that I met was our local comic book shop, which at the time was Arkham Comics. They're online only now, but it was in Wilson, North Carolina, and they introduced me to a local artist whose name is Louis Small Jr., and he did Vampirella back in the 90s. He's done like work for DC and Marvel. He still does some covers and stuff here and there. But through him, I met Matt Sotelo, and after the stuff happened with my other friend, I talked to Matt and brought him on as the co-owner of Catalyst. And so he was working on Paradigm at the time. And then it came from that to just starting to talk to people. And what we noticed was as soon as we put out our first book, a lot of people disappeared. A lot of people that they were there, in the beginning, they're like, man, that's awesome. We hope you do it. And then when it came time to actually put it out, those people disappeared. That was the local scene. And not everyone's local scene's that way, but ours was, unfortunately. And so then we just started reaching out more online, meeting different people, and that's how we started building our teams. And we've never really looked back. You'll find a lot of people in indie comics, they kind of fall into different ponds with each other. We kind of just float on a lazy river wherever we feel like going, and we don't really, combine ourselves with too many people that are stuck in their little worlds, because we want to have interactions and talk with everybody, and we know we can learn from everybody who's making comics.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So then that, just to kind of follow up then with that, so the dynamic sounds like, you're very open, kind of open-minded, kind of that growth mindset is like you said, like the lazy river where you're kind of exploring other things. So does that dynamic, is that pretty organic as far as like ideas and artwork to your writing styles, or is there a lot of back and forth? Do you find that it's kind of sinks in pretty easily? Like what does that dynamic look like?
Yeah, so basically when I come up with a new story, I will sit down with Matt and I'll go through it with him so he knows what where my mind is. And then he kind of gets first dibs on if he wants to do the art on it or not. And he's very open about, if it's a story that he thinks another artist would be better suited for, that we'll find that artist together. And we've done that a few times now. And then if he likes the story, then he might want to push that one forward, which is what we did with Welcome to Everville. That was one that I just kind of pitched him the entire 6-story arc, and he was like, we need to get on this. So we started making it. And then with Tilt, that was more organic, where once we made the team just wanted to keep going. And so we just kind of have been keeping up with that.
Very nice.
Nice. So I'm curious about the, not only are you a writer and a creative, but, you also have to run the company as well. And then, you have to put on another hat for the marketing side of it when you're doing these Kickstarters. Tell me about that process, in case other people that are watching this show and they want to launch their own book. Like, how did you get traction in the Kickstarter area?
Yeah, so the first thing that I will tell people is we have a podcast that we're pretty open about our failures on. And our first campaign could have been tragic, but we didn't know people. We didn't have an email following, and none of that stuff was set up. But we launched thinking like it would be great. So we did like a $4,500 goal on a book that nobody's heard of, with 2 people behind it that made it that nobody's heard of. And if there's like one major thing that I would tell people is like, probably don't do that. So by the grace of God, halfway through that campaign, 2 different people came to us and they're like, get whatever you can get. We will fund the rest because we want to help the company start. Not everybody gets that kind of, people that are willing to jump in like that. we're thankful for it
Yeah.
constantly, and it's really what has put us in the place that we are now. What we learned was maybe start meeting more people and start getting on shows. And then while we were doing that is why we started the podcast. We wanted people to join us in the adventure of trying to figure out what it's like behind the scenes being a indie comic book small press publisher. And so we started talking to more and more people. A lot of that was on Facebook. And Facebook, what I can tell people, Facebook's really good for meeting people that are making comic books. And you can get on their shows and talk about that kind of stuff. But what people don't really realize is that's not where most of your traction is going to come from. And to be honest, like that's where what we're learning more and more is that Twitter is where a lot more of the fan base is rather than any of the other social platforms. Instagram is very, I don't want to say fake because that seems too cliche to say that Instagram's fake, but like your numbers and the likes and comments and stuff on Instagram, they're not turning into backers. Whereas on Twitter, you have direct conversations with people, and you get more response, just like you guys responding to my post about looking for podcasts to come on. I had no idea that posting that would get like 100 responses. If I posted that same thing on Facebook and I got 2 responses that were from friends of ours that were like, hey, our show, you can always come on. And we're like, that's cool, but we're trying to branch out. So Twitter,
Right.
and email list is essential, especially as a small press publisher, because not only does it give news, but it gives them behind the scenes stuff, and you can help anytime you launch something. And then beyond that, it's getting on shows where people are into comic books rather than just wanting to hear other creators chat about comic books. So if you have a fan base that's into learning about comic books, that's great. But having people that are just interested in reading comic books, those are the people that are going to buy your books.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Speaking of books, I wanted to ask again about Tilt. So one of the things that I was really having fun with was his fourth wall breaking style, as I mentioned earlier. What was kind of like, because you said you have Paradigm, obviously, who's like darker, but what was the inspiration to like, let's do something more fun in this, the Catalyst universe and have him, Mike and I were talking earlier. There was like hints of like some of our other favorites like Deadpool or Invincible. We were thinking about with some of the ways that Tilt reacts to acts with people and stuff. But what were some of your actual inspirations for the character?
Yeah, so having the fun character really was a thing that came out of necessity, because I knew Paradigm was going to be dark, and then our other character of the big 3 for us is Silhouette. And so far, she's not had a comic book, but she has a short story that's called Shadow Games. And that one, I didn't realize going into it until I wrote it that it was going to be even darker than Paradigm. Her whole thing is like trying to find her sister that was sold into human trafficking. So I was like, we need something to lighten the mood. And that's why I did the Tilt stuff. And then I just had those weird quirks with him where I was just like, if he was taken at 15 and had to do all this mercenary stuff, and then he's back in the real world, he doesn't know how to act around women. He doesn't know how to act around really anybody. So even like those interactions with him and Cindy in issue 1, it's very flirty, but teenage flirty when they're like full-grown adults, and it shouldn't be like that. And then, you have the people that are kind of off-putting that he talks to, like the secretary who asked if he was a strippergram. And like he doesn't really even know what that would be. And so even with Exquisite, like so much of that when he broke into his office was very teenagery and like angsty and just trying to prove a point. But that's what was fun for me, was it's almost like going back and exploring my own teenage years through a character that's not a teenager anymore. And so all that stuff kind of just boiled out of that. And it's been one of the most rewarding things to not only write, but to hear people give feedback on, especially when people that aren't into superhero stuff come back and they're like, I'm not into superhero books, but I really enjoy Tilt. For me personally, of course, that's the greatest compliment, and I could just hang up the hat there. But it's fun seeing people connect. Back to the earlier question, though, this just dawned on me, and I really should have mentioned it. One of the smartest things we did marketing-wise was give away Tilt #1 for free to our email subscribers. When you sign up for our email, you get a welcome email, has a download link, and you can check out Tilt. And when we started doing that, we noticed our numbers have over doubled. And on top of that, on Instagram, anytime someone follows us, we have a welcome kind of message that shoots out to them that encourages them to go get the free copy of Tilt as well.
That's awesome.
Well, that's fantastic. So, Aaron, you're talking about kind of the the darker areas where sometimes these stories goes, and wanting to do something a little bit more lighthearted and fun. Do you challenge yourself to just kind of reach out to other people like that maybe inspire you for those kinds of changes in writing style, or do you? I guess, what does that look like for you? Do you kind of just generate it from within? Do you kind of are always looking to kind of learn something from someone else? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so this is where conversations kind of get weird, I guess, because it's more about stuff that people don't maybe not know about me until they listen to me talk on a podcast. A lot of it comes out of just me having to filter stuff out. As a creator, I think it's important that you kind of filter out the dark stuff if you don't want to be a dark person. And so for me, that's where these stories come from. Welcome to Everville is another one that's real dark. And it's the furthest that I've pushed myself so far, but now I'm working on something that's even further than that. But my background, I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up in church. I was a minister up until our church closed down last year. I was a worship pastor, so I sing and play guitar. And for me, writing the stories is a way to kind of curb a lot of different feelings, thoughts. So even when you read these stories, you're not going to see religious overtones. You're going to see me filtering out different thoughts, different storylines that if I let them just kind of eat away at me, then it's probably not a good thing. More of that background. I was originally going to be a psychologist before I went into teaching. And now I'm not a teacher anymore, and I wish I had went for psychology. So it's just the way the world works, I guess. But so for me, it's more of a psychological process than anything else.
Kind of
that's
like
great.
What's the word I look for? Like exorcism. Like you're
cleansing.
just getting out those
Cleansing. That's awesome.
I wonder. That makes me wonder what Stephen King's got inside of him that he has to get out.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I kind of want to bring it back a little bit towards the marketing, because I think that's really interesting, and how you've done it digitally. It seems like that was the main focus. Have you guys done the convention circuit and gotten tables, and have you done the kind of the footwork going to local comic shops? What does that look like, and how are those relationships built up?
Yeah, so people aren't going to like what I'm going to say, but my honest opinion is going to cons is utterly pointless, at least where we are in North Carolina and like the southeast coast. It's not worth it. You're not going to make the money back on the table. You're not going to make the money back on the hotels, the gas, any of it, until you can start offering trades. And so for us, that is our next big feat. After we finish the campaign for Tilt number 4, all of that's going to, of course, become a trade, and it'll be our first trade. So we'll probably shop that around a little bit first to see if anybody's interested in publishing it beyond what we're capable of. And beyond that, if we publish it ourselves, I'm perfectly fine with that. But the con circuit we have done, and it's been more so a vacation than it has been like actually making any money. We make more money just doing digital stuff, which is awful, but we know that changes at some point. But to give an idea of what it really looks like in the South, unless you're going to the big ones like Heroes Con, where there actually is a dedicated focus toward comic books and comic book creation, everything around here is just cosplay, and they're not going to buy your books. They spent all their money making their cosplays. They might come over to your table, but it's usually to set their drink on your table while they take a picture with a bunch of other cosplayers. But for us, we have kind of taken a step back. The last con we did because they allowed us to do a panel on creating comics. And so for us, that was just something to do for fun. And then what we've realized is we make way more money and have way more fun going into local shops and setting up for the ones that'll have us. And so we've done that for really since the beginning. And it's still the most fun that either of us has, is just kind of going in the stores, meeting the different store owners, seeing the stuff they're interested in. One of the biggest things that I can say is get to know the owners, and you'll find that they're willing to work with you more. For instance, the Paradigm, when we did the Kickstarter for that, we only had 3 stores that were interested in it. But what we did was we offered them a incentive cover for Tilt #1 that was just going to be a simplistic variant of the main cover. And on Tilt #1, there's like his logo, and instead of that, we replaced his logo with the store name and like neon lights, and then we had whatever that color was shining on. And so one of the stores that did that was in Florence, South Carolina, which what I just saw on the news that they're going to be the largest square footage wise comic book store on the East Coast. Anyway, so that's cool. So they did the incentive cover, and then he was like, "This is awesome. I want to keep doing this." So for the next issue, so the first one, he ordered an extra 50 copies of the incentive cover. For us, huge. We're just small press. It was our second book. So issue 3 of Tilt, he was like, "Well, now I need 150," and that one we did like a full-on different cover. And then this one, he's already picked out what the art is that he wants for it, and he's going to do another 150 for that one. So building those relationships is just key, and it's also fun.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm really glad that I asked that, because that was a really, really cool answer. I think our watchers would love to know that that's a really creative marketing plan to come up with a cover for a local shop like that. Really genius. I know that the shop that I go to, they're really into supporting independent comic book producers, and they have people in their shop all the time. So I think you're right. I'm getting to know the owners of these shops, and those are the people that want to buy comic books that are coming into a comic book store. So I think that's super smart. Yeah, I love that.
Have you guys been expanding your radius as far as like slowly each time you release something new, kind of expanding the radius of like the shops that you're going to, the folks that you're trying to meet?
We've more so been expanding the radius of fans. We've brought on a lot more fans in the last year than we had in the 2 or 3 years, however long it's been before that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it had to do with putting out different kinds of content. Superhero stuff is really hard to sell anyway, especially when it's indie small press, because people kind of have their superheroes and they're not interested in trying new stuff. And then there's the other thing of like, they'll get invested in something that just disappears and they never get to see the rest of the story. So I understand it. And I try to tell people like, we're structured as a company to be here for longer than just a year or two. I didn't come into this by myself. That's another big thing is you'll find creators that get into comic books and they put 1 or 2 books out. They don't make the return that they were thinking they would make, and then they just stop, which is sad, because we probably lose out on a lot of great stories. We lose out on a lot of great career progression as well. Yeah. But I try to tell people, don't come into comic books thinking that it's a hustle and that you're going to make a whole bunch of money, because it is not the way to make money. You will absolutely be paying more money than you'll be making back for at least a while.
Yeah. That seems to be the case with like a lot of things. Like I'm like talking about this show, right? It's like we always joke, once we get to like episode 100, we'll have it down.
Our main show, Beards and Comics podcast, we have put that on a hiatus 2 different times now, and we're getting close to number 100. We completely changed the way we did the show twice. But I don't know. I don't know if you guys are like we are, where we're just constantly talking behind the scenes about like, should we just change the way we're doing it? And then the more we asked that, eventually we were just like, or we could just put this show on hiatus. And so we did that, and we did it for 2 weeks, and then we were like, I got an idea. So we brought it back after 2 weeks, and people were like, you guys are stupid. Because our other show was popping off way more than that one was, and we're like, well, I guess we need to put the time into that, because the other one's like, we read fan fiction, and we just joke around and laugh about it, and people love that for whatever reason. So now our next thing is, instead of me reading it, we want to start getting guest readers to come in, pick whatever story they want. We've done My Little Pony, we've done Power Rangers. I believe we're doing a Golden Girls one. And then we're going to start inviting people to come on and just read a short, like, fan fiction, whatever they want, so we can just have fun and react to it. And people are really vibing with that show, which is depressing because we're like, but we love comic books and we love talking about comic books, and nobody wants to hear us talk about comic books.
Right. Gold Girls.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna spin back around. Sorry, real quick, Aaron. To talking about podcasts and things, obviously awesome. And it sounds like you're always constantly looking at ways making it better and reinventing the shows and things like that and talks. But as far as the comics, like, do you have like a ton of like ideas that you're just kind of biding your time? Like maybe you want to jump into other stories or other things, but you're just kind of waiting till things play out, or like, do you have like all these ideas that you're just like, I want to do this and I want to do this? What do you got going on in that big brain of yours?
I have so many stories, and they're just in notebooks everywhere. I'm 33, but I've been writing since I was, a teenager. So I still have stories that were birthed out of that. I have a novel that I might someday finish. I'm 40,000 words in. If I ever sit down and finish it, I'll feel like I've done something. I write other stuff as well. I have my articles that I put out every week on Substack, and they're flash fiction, and then one about creators' mental health. And I do this because I'm waiting. And so much of being a writer in comic books is the waiting game. Tilt number 4 is coming out. I wrote it, the entire 4-issue arc, like 6 or 7 years ago. And I'm just kind of getting, you got to wait on the other stuff to get done. While we're doing that, we're publishing other stuff. Welcome to Everville, One Last Job. Those aren't tied into the Catalyst Comics universe. But the Catalyst Comics universe is my baby. There are 42 issues planned before we get to the first major crossover event. And we've only dipped our toes into that. And so maybe we'll get that done before I die. Maybe we won't. But we have our other stories that I want to keep telling too. And One Last Job, we've done number 1 and number 2, and that's only going to be a 4-issue story. So we only have 2 more to go. So hopefully by the end of next year, we'll have both of those done. Welcome to Everville is 6 issues. I don't know when that will ever get done. And then there's another one that I'm writing now that's probably going to be the more commercial one. And that'll probably be one of the first one that's just like succinct coming out or whatever. So hopefully I'll get to tell more of these stories. If not, then hopefully someone has dibs to all my notebooks when I pass. So.
So you said you've been, speaking of your notebooks and stuff, right? You said you've been writing and coming up with stuff since you were a teenager. What was like if you can recall, like the first kind of story that you came up with that you can remember?
The earliest story that sticks to my mind was a spy in middle school. And it was kind of like, I don't know if you guys know Alex Rider. But that was like the big book series from, I can't remember his name, Horowitz. Adam Horowitz, I think was the author's name. There's a TV show now. But that was like the first kind of storyline that I had, was like a teenage spy. There was some supernatural stuff in there. It was dumb. I mean, it was a teenager, so it probably had like, romance stuff of what I thought romance was at the time. So I'm sure it's awful. And again, that's another one. If anyone comes across it, it was a different Aaron.
Yeah. Can I volunteer to read that one on your fan fiction show?
I need to start writing fan fiction. That's the other thing I thought about doing, but I gotta focus. I gotta stay
focused. Yeah.
Well, man. So my question is, who inspires you, and what stuff are you reading that keeps you energized?
So right now, one of the biggest inspirations and someone that's become a really good friend to me is Doug Wagner. That he wrote Plastic and Vinyl. He did some Batman stuff. The Hard Place, Thomas River. Anyway, I met him through a podcast that I was on where they were doing a night of spy thrillers. And he had Thomas River, and I had One Last Job, and we talked through that. And then by the end of that conversation, he was just like, like, shoot me an email, man. And I was like, okay. So immediately we talk every couple of days, and he's someone that's really inspirational for me to see his progression and his admission to people about, plastic was the biggest thing that he's ever released, and he's released a bunch of stuff since then. So he's like, that's great. I had a banger, and then, I release other stuff I care about, and it's not as big, but he's not in it for that. And the dude's like best friends with Brian Stelfreeze, and they did Thomas River, and that still didn't sell like plastic sold. So it's been interesting to kind of learn that too, that even when you level up, there's still the same struggle. It might just be in a higher caliber. But I've learned a lot about pitching, a lot about talking to different people outside of your comfort zone. Another big influence for me was Tim Seeley. If anyone ever wants to know why Tilt doesn't have his shirt on a lot, it is because Tim Seeley wrote Grayson and Nightwing, and which Grayson's one of my all-time favorite runs because it was different. Yeah. It was Dick Grayson as a spy, and it was constant. I had talked to him about it because we had him on the podcast, and I email him on occasion, and we had talked about he played into Beefcake. Because he was like, we sexualize women in comics, like, let's have some fun with a guy. So he had Dick Grayson, who's just, the perfect one to do that with. And when I read through that series, I had told Joe DeSantos, who's the artist on Tilt, that I was talking to Tim. We were talking about the Beefcake stuff. And I was like, I want to do that same thing with Tilt. And he was like, okay. What I heard was anytime I can get him out of a shirt, I'll get him out of a shirt. I was like, Joe, do it. And he did it. And we love it.
It's funny you talk about, because I was remembering in the first issue when he's the woman, like, he's getting all his new gear and stuff. And she's just like, I could really see your muscles.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's directly where that idea came from, was just Tim Seeley being dumb, doing Beefcake stuff, and I thought that was just hilarious. And then if there was any character that I've created that would be perfect for that, it'd be Tilt. So, especially with the whole, like I said, teenage mindset, he just has no real idea that he's as good looking as he is. So it's fun to play off of that. Other influence, the Count of Monte Cristo is my name on here. Alexander Dumas, for telling stories, is one of my biggest influences. And for those that don't know the Count of Monte Cristo, he also wrote The Three Musketeers and Man in the Iron Mask. But if you guys haven't read the Count of Monte Cristo, I highly recommend it. Or at least watch the movie. I mean, Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce were in it, so...
There you go.
Caviezel.
Yep.
Can't go wrong. Absolutely. Gosh. Well, I mean, Ben, you want to talk about how we're going to put the links below?
Yeah. Hey, so as a reminder to everybody, check the show notes, check the description on the video if you're watching on YouTube. We're going to have all the links off. As Aaron was saying, they're launching the Kickstarter, so we'll have the links there and to the Catalyst website and everything. So make sure you check those out. Get those back issues of Tilt and stuff, because it's an awesome ride. And Aaron, can people still get the first issue?
Yeah, so you could still pick up the first issue free. On the campaign, you'll be able to get all 4 issues. I will note that after this campaign, we will not be reprinting 1, 2, and 3. And then when we're out of 4, we're out of 4 because we're going for a trade, so we're not going to keep printing. So we're going to use what we have left. I do have to reprint issue 2. Have no idea why. For some reason, issue 2 we are completely out of. So this campaign is going to be your last chance to get those single issues, and there's going to be a lot of other ridiculous stuff that we put into that campaign that I think people will really enjoy.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, it was just an absolute pleasure getting to know you and hear about your work. So hopefully this show helps more people find you and learn about your company. So thanks for coming on.
No, thanks for having me on. This is awesome. Love meeting new people.
All right. Well, that was just fantastic. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell so we can keep bringing you content like this. And we'll see you on the next one.